Hey class, it's Allison again. I'm going to talk a little bit about Chapter 2 in our textbook. So the point here is to analyze a little bit about the content that's in the chapter and also talk about my own experience. So I'm going to put my own experience first. I think first off, this chapter, which is pages 53 through 79, reflects my own experience as an adolescent, mainly because I was taught kind of what this textbook says, which is that the differences between races are due to cultural and family differences, and doesn't talk anything about history of unequal power structures and white supremacy, which has been very much ingrained in our society in the United States. So what I understand now, after many years of trying to unlearn what I've learned growing up in what I understand to be a very racist society, is that the discourse used in this book is the type of analysis that maintains white normativity. And I think it contributes to racism instead of finding ways to dismantle it. And I think as educators, and for me as an educator, it's my hope to be able to talk with youth and work with youth on what is their experience and how do they have different experiences and why those experiences are shaped by the society that we live in. So if you live in poverty, what are the things that contribute to poverty? What are the policies that make that a different experience than sort of what we think of as sort of the white mainstream middle class America? So I want to pull out a few quotes just to point out how, to me, absurd some of these quotes are. So page 60, there's a quote that says, adolescents feel different and sometimes marginalized. And that this is a feeling of difference often affects them more than the specifics of their cultural background. So again, there's no mention of how we, and when I say we, I'm going to talk about where I grew up with. I grew up with a bunch of white people in rural Michigan, and there's no talk about how white normativity and white people make others feel different and marginalized, and how that's sort of a structural thing that we're taught to think that there's one way to be in this country. And I think myself as a white person, I have a responsibility to understand why there are these perceived differences, and hopefully in my work with youth, that's something we can talk about. Again, gotta be brief because this is only supposed to be 3 minutes. Okay, lastly, direct quote on page 68. Many Puerto Rican youths are compelled to live in abject poverty. Sorry, this makes it sound a little bit like Puerto Ricans choose to be discriminated against and displaced out of their neighborhood. So let's look at a little history here. In Chicago, a lot of Puerto Rican people live in Humboldt Park right now. Why do they live there? Well, they used to all live in Lincoln Park until they were, which is where DePaul is, until they were displaced through a policy of gentrification that was carried out by the city and others. And so I think it's really important to look at, are people really compelled to live in poverty? Is that an active decision? Or are we living in a world that puts some as valuable over others in terms of when we look at policies, institutions, and also everyday interactions? So sort of an invitation as educators to look at what is the history behind these things that we're being fed in this book, and I hope we can talk about it more. Thanks.